Hi, Fatih.
Hi, Emil.
Hey,
Hi,
Brett. Welcome.
Yep.
Glad you could join.
Yeah, I'm glad I'm managing to get these things back on my calendar.
Yeah. While waiting, I'll share the link to the notes if you didn't have it already. Please sign up. I talked to Andrea a few hours ago, and he intends to join as well. So I think we should wait for him. Just a couple of minutes. So you'll probably see my sharing now as well.
Yes. While we're waiting, I did share the CDF with a new contact of mine via LinkedIn. And I don't know if he's going to come today or waiting if he's going to come on next Thursday, but I did share that with one of the people I met last week. So I will continue to share with contacts as I
On that conference you were, or
yeah.
Great.
So and then I've got Raleigh DevOps days, and I've got 2 talks on Raleigh DevOps days in April. So I'll use that event as a place to spread the word about what we do, which is get together and with the same 4 guys and 5 guys and talk about the same stuff.
Great. Hi, Andrea.
Hi. Sorry I'm late today.
No problem. So the agenda today, I don't have too much on it. I'm glad Brad is here. Sorry, Brett, because we plan to have you here to talk a bit about supply chain. So that's one of the topics we should look into when we look at what happens in other groups. I thought could be suitable. Then I will just mention the CDF awards. I assume you're all aware of it, but just a reminder there to nominate people. And then some about upcoming conferences. And here we have Jalander as well. Zoom connected. Hi, Jalander, welcome.
Hi.
Hey.
I just joined the work group meeting, but yeah, so
was there another meeting invite or?
no, on the same I see, yeah, right. So there's a work group, CD Events work group also, right? On this.
Yeah, okay. That's the other meeting.
Yeah, I just joined there, so no one there.
different Zoom meetings, yeah. I'm glad we found this one now. Okay, so please sign up on the minutes. No action items, as we noted from last meeting 2 weeks ago on the SIG. But from other groups, I can mention in the CDF Events work group, you have been there, most of you in different meetings. We currently plan to, or we have postponed the release for 0.2. It was initially planned for like 2 weeks ago, and then we changed it to tomorrow, end of February. Now we postponed it 2 more weeks. let's hope we can finish it by then, but we'll see. And the reason for pushing for it a bit is that we want to have another release as well before the CDCon conference in May. Yeah, and the focus on the first one will be on the incident events, which there is a PR for, which is well, not done, but doesn't lack too much, I would say. So I think it could be quite soon merged. And then the focus for the coming release after that would be about connected events and hopefully supply chain events if we have anything there. And I guess we will come back to that soon in this meeting. From other groups, I don't know if there is much to say from the TOC group that is valuable to us. You can fill in, Patti or Andrea, if you have anything. Otherwise, I think we can move on.
Yeah, no, maybe just quickly that we have like project presentation to the TSC schedule. So there is a table in the TSC meeting notes for projects to present and a status update to the TOC. And I think there is the first presentation was in December by me on CD Events, and there is one scheduled by you, Emil, I believe in August, is it?
Yeah, like, so I think the idea was to have like twice per year or something, or at least on a rolling schedule. And since we have 10 projects, that's probably the next occasion when CD events should come up again. Yeah. So I feel like I can share that. There's notes here as well, if you're interested. Oops. So not too many have yet signed up, but there will be a Tecton presentation in March. And then, as Andrea said, we will have again about seed events. But in between here, we hope to get all other projects, of course. But we'll see if we manage.
Yes.
Good. Thanks. Then I guess we can jump to supply chain. We had a meeting last Wednesday, was it? I was there, Patti was there, Brett was there. And we talked a bit about events there. So we thought it would be maybe suitable to to bring that topic in here as well. Since we are some more event-oriented people here. So I don't know, Brett, if you want to
I can talk.
start by saying a bit
for a
about
second.
what the area is, more or less, and just introduction to the I don't know, supply chain area.
So for the supply chain, we were talking about how we can contribute to CD events without a lot of overlap, right? We don't want to go do the same thing you guys are doing over in the other SIG. It doesn't make any sense, but we want to be able to contribute. So we talked about that we could probably contribute types of events and descriptions of the data that we would like to see in the events. And a couple of things that came up was like we talked about tracking the creation of SBOMs as an event. And then, we talked about, could we discover CVEs as events? And then what we would do is that we would describe what we wanted, what these events should look like. And then we would bring them back to the CD events group and let them help, flesh out what that data, what that structure looks like and how we represent that. Obviously, SBOMs can be huge. And in my mind, you want the events to have just enough information so you can go find the reference materials. So like the way we do it here at SAS now is we audit the SBOM, and then we audit the SBOM, and then we put a link to the SBOM. So there's a smaller section of data about the SBOM to describe it so that you can make a decision on whether you need to pull it or not, that type of thing. We do the same thing with security events. So so like under CVEs, we would, when we run a scan, we are now auditing the scans. So we get an event that a scan ran, and then that event triggers the audit to go and I'm not very good at typing and talking, am I?
No problem.
So yeah, I mean, talk about those type of things, and then we didn't get too much farther than those two, but there's probably a lot more that we need to talk about, especially when we get around sign provenance, and we start getting to that salsa agenda. There's probably some stuff to be done around, did we generate sign provenance for this particular thing.
Is that where in total attestations come into play as well?
Yeah. Yeah, we're waiting on the government here in the US. I have to remember, you guys are all over the place. Here in the US, we're waiting on the government to give us the minimum standard for attestations. They were supposed to have them in January. So that's something else we're kind of waiting on. So, and that attestations and sign provenance don't have to be aren't always the same thing. Yeah, that's pretty much where we are. I know that's not a huge huge revelation, but kind of what we're thinking.
So what is really the difference between provenance and attestations then? If you,
I don't know yet, because they haven't given us because they haven't given us the minimum.
Okay, yeah, depends on that, yeah.
Right. So if you go with signed provenance from, and say we use in toto standard, right? It's pretty in depth. You've got the materials, the environment. Oh God, don't need to go back to my presentation. There's 4 things that they're concerned about recording information about in the signed provenance, and then of course you sign it. With an attestation, I don't know what we're going to be required here in the US yet. So yeah, be interesting to figure it out. Like the customer, so like a customer probably doesn't need to know the commands I use to create the binary. But the signed provenance should have the commands in it, so that when we try to do the reproducible build, we pull the signed provenance, we make sure that we're not running commands that don't belong, right? So if I ran make install, and then the system tries to run make foo make install, then I come to a hard stop, right, in the process, and throw up my hands with a flag. Attestation would be, I've got this document that says this binary has this SHA-SUM, and I'm attesting to the fact that we created this in a hermetic build environment. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? I think that's what they're going to intend. And look, I could be wrong. I mean, I've been reading through these ISO standards, and man, they are vague. So, but yeah, that's so I came up with 2 more. That's pretty good.
So you said you used such already some references of those kinds in your systems today. How is that done in SCS?
So we've got the event-driven. So we've got an event-driven system that is, still proprietary. I haven't been able to open source the pieces of it I need to open source yet. But basically, we throw JSON on a Kafka bus and consume it. But the the message you put on the Kafka bus is small, and it has a reference back to what we call a receipt, which is in a database with a GraphQL front end and a REST front end. And then so in the message we have an ID, you know, a ULID that lets us go grab that receipt out of the database, and so and then go comb through that for more information, right? And then there's an envelope on the front that gives you a way to tie several of these receipts together. So we call it an NVRPP, which is the name, version, release, platform ID, and package, right? And those 5 things are used to track every event that happens, right? And then inside of that, along with the NVRPP, there's some other, you know, creation date and some timestamp info. And then there's a payload section for the receipt. And in the payload section, we have a CNAB bundle, right? And this is because this is before I knew you guys were working on this. And then so we did the CNAB bundle, and then inside of the CNAB bundle, there's a custom section that you can put all kinds of random data in. The idea was we were going to leverage the CNAB tooling to help replay events, and that turned out to be a ambitious goal. So if I ever get a chance, if I ever have to decide to redesign the message system, you know, I'll just adopt this CDF spec that we are working on. One of the limits we had was that our internal Kafka defaulted to only a 1 megabyte message, so I couldn't put everything on the bus, right? So we, but then we put a 1 megabyte limit on our receipts so that I could stream the receipts onto another Kafka topic so that they could be ingested into a data lake, and then we could run queries and all kinds of other crazy stuff against them without destroying production. But yeah, so, oh, that's what I was getting at, right? So, but now we've got a cloud instance of Kafka as well as the on-prem, and the cloud instance can handle 5 megabyte messages pretty easily. And so now I'm starting to think that when I do version 3 of this system, that I could do a bigger message that had a lot of the data already in it, so that I didn't have to go pull a receipt out of a database, right? You know, that extra step. Anyway, just some stuff that we're working through, talking about.
Interesting. A lot of questions to raise there, I guess. But yeah, but how many events per minute or second do you send in your system then with that? I mean, then it's quite substantial size anyway. If you talk about megabytes. Sorry?
10,000?
10,000 per second, per minute?
Oh God, I have to go look. It wasn't enough to scratch a small cloud instance of Kafka. So I would say that we are not, the messages are small, so we're not abusing Kafka, but we do run a lot of messages. And I haven't done any numbers recently, but it was, I could go look while I'm talking.
Yeah. But you said your events could be up to a meg then?
Yes, they can be up to a meg.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
It's quite large anyway. Yeah.
Right, it is quite large. And the question is what kind of performance destruction do I do if I let them get bigger than a meg? And so those are like all the questions I have to think about before we.
I guess you store them somewhere as well, and then your database fills up quite quickly unless you scrap them.
No, you can't delete events. You can't delete the receipts, is it? Because it's an audit trail, right? And so theoretically, I mean, theoretically, at some point we can archive the data and take it out of the database, but we can't delete it, because if I ever wanted to go look something up that happened, I need to have that receipt there. And then the receipts are tied to gates, which the gates are like, if I have a gate, it represents an action. So if I've got this, say I was running a build, right? And I've got this build gate and I put receipts in it all the time for different NVRPPs every time I build one, right? That gate can never go away. So we never delete gates, we never delete receipts. And then there's a stage wrapped around it, around the gates, that triggers once all the gates have been satisfied with a true statement for the receipt. And then that stage fires. Now the stages can be disabled and enabled because they grow and shrink sometimes as we add gates and remove gates. And so that part got pretty interesting, where it became to the point where we're making stages pretty much dynamically on the fly, based on what gates are registered for what things were. It gets real complicated real fast. But so, and then none of the data can be deleted. So
yeah, I totally understand. Yeah, I was just a bit
It's right.
concerned since you say those. So anyway, quite big events then. If they're up to 1 meg and you send so many, it will be a lot of data. But yeah,
performance testing, network traffic.
Mm.
Let's see.
So how does these references to SBOMs and those parts scan results look in the SAS events then? Is that also part of the receipts that are referenced from the events, or is that are the references themselves in the events? Or
So the event would reference the receipt, which would contain the reference to the SBOM.
Okay.
Ideally, you take out that second step, but the problem comes back to what we talked about, where I got to keep the messages small, and then the messages have a schema, and we don't want to deviate from the schema ever. And so, but receipts can have this custom section that doesn't have a schema, or could have a schema, and it sprawls, right? So constructing messages and events, you want to have a schema that allows you to do these certain things, and then you are allowed to have certain fields that can kind of sprawl, like a metadata field, right? In our particular instance, our metadata field is a key value pair.
yeah.
And then but like in the custom section, God knows, if it fits, you can put it in there. And then, as long as it's JSON. Now, the first thing that a developer will try to do on you is he'll try to base 64 something and shove it in the custom section. So we have to make sure that's on the list of things not to do.
Yeah, because you can't see what it is. Yeah.
So we pump during the load tests, we were doing 0.03 megabytes per second worth of messages and consuming about 0.05 megabytes. So, I mean, like I said, we weren't even scratching the system, and we run like tons of stuff. Can't find the exact messages per minute though. I don't know why. Anyway.
So you said you have a schema then for your events there, but you can't share it since it's proprietary, I guess, or is it possible to demo it somehow, or at least you can consider it when reviewing the city events schema specs?
You know how it is. Every time I want to share something, I can go to legal.
yeah, of course, yeah. I know.
But yeah, no, the schema is open API. The schema is written in is also written in JSON, and then there's all the APIs in the system are documented by OpenAPI 3 docs. So
how do you handle the integration with the schemas to your source code then that send these events? Do you have SDKs generated from OpenAPI, or what does the code look like integrated?
I think in the worst way possible is the way we did it.
Hard-coded.
So one of the things we did is the whole system most of the system's written in Go, and I got in our IT department wouldn't let us deploy into their Kubernetes environment if we had too many vulnerabilities, right? And so when we started out, all of our images were based on the Red Hat UBI image, which has some vulnerabilities in it. And they didn't particularly want me to deploy that on their stuff. So I got mad and I ripped everything out and went with scratch containers. And then so when we got the scratch containers done, we started baking the schema into the Go binary. So the schema for like stuff that's not configurable, that's baked into the Go binaries. And then when you create a gate and you want to put a schema with it, when you post your request to the service to create the gate, you send the schema with it. And then the schema will get applied to that gate, and then you won't be able to post a receipt that doesn't meet the schema for that gate. And that's kind of arbitrary. Like that's up to the end user to, you know, craft his schema and post it to the gate. And yeah, so.
Yeah. See. So yeah, good discussions. I guess we drift away from the subject of supply chain a bit, but to me it's interesting in a way. So rest of you, please fill in if you have any questions or thoughts. Did you have something else on your mind there from the supply chain perspective?
Not really. I think we need to. I think I need to go and read what you currently have, and then see what other ideas I could come up with. Yeah, like this is my first time back to the SIG events since we went on break, so I definitely should read what you guys have, and it's in CD events, right? Not in SIG events.
CD events, yeah. So
Yeah.
we don't have any supply chain related really properties yet, I would say. Let's see where we have the somewhere quite.
I just saw one issue there, Emil. If you go back,
Yeah.
I've seen
This is
software
here.
supply something.
Oh, there is. Yeah,
Yeah,
there
there.
is, yeah. So
That's
this
good.
is the issue we have, but it doesn't really say much about exactly what to include, and there is nothing in the current spec in the 0.1 version that really references these things
Oh, okay.
yet.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
like I need to leave in 3 minutes for another meeting, but I actually will send the pull request for SIG software supply chain roadmap as we discussed last week, and I will add a few sentences there, like how we can help contribute to CD events from supply chain perspective. So please keep an eye on software supply chain SIG repo and comment on the roadmap to see if it makes sense. Like one of the things I plan to highlight that is vocabulary to start with and then continue iterating it over time based on the conversation we had last week.
So, you know, is this like where do I go to the CD events and create a pull request and then give you a schema based on an event, and then we can riff on the schema in the pull request? Is that probably the best way to handle this?
Yeah, the schemas could be elaborated on in the pull request, yeah. But you can start with an issue if you want and discuss it first, but that's either way.
Okay. I was thinking more, I probably should go dig through the issues, I guess, then first and see if it already exists. If there's already an issue, then I can create a pull request for that issue and help out that way.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we have the schemas. Well, we had the documentation first, and then the JSON schemas adjacent to it as well. So the documentation talks about what different subjects we represent in our events and their different predicates. So each of these predicates has their own events. So a build can be queued, started, or finished, for example, 3 different types of events for a build subject. So that's how you would read this table of events.
Right.
Yeah. And then the schemas are in the JSON folder, a schema folder next to here as well. You can see all JSON schemas.
Do we have
what
a
they look like.
concept of pass and fail?
Pass and fail, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe call it success and failure or something like that. But we have that in the Andreas. In the core events, we have them in the pipelines finished and the task run finished, for example. We have some outcome, which could be success, error, or failure. So you can get acquainted with the events that are there and see if it makes sense to you, and if you lack some specific events, and then it'll be more interesting what properties you lack in the events.
Yeah, I need to. Well, it's Monday, right? Probably a good day to go through this before somebody starts to pile on in my deck, because that's what happens.
We also have a couple of PRs open now on the spec repo for incident, event, and test events. So I mean, if you're at some point interested in doing some contribution to the spec, and you can take a look at those to get like a practical examples, what kind of
Right.
things you need to do.
Yeah, one of the
But-
things that we do is, and I'm going to use the term X unit loosely, but our testers output their test data into J unit or X unit, and then we have what we call an X unit to receipt tool that picks up the XML, evaluates the test suites, and then tells us to make a decision, whether it's pass or fail, whether the test is passed or failed, based on the number of errors or failures in there. And so that's, yeah, I have some ideas on test events.
Then I think you should look into the PR for testing events here as well, which was contributed by CubeShop for the test cube tool. They have actually created or split out the test events into its own bucket, as we call it, a container of event types.
Yeah, it's pretty, test events are they're big enough to be their own entity.
Yeah. Where they have created, let's see what we should bring up. For example, here we have the testing events MD. We can just look at what it looks like quickly.
Yeah, I'm looking through it now.
Yeah, good. So there you have 3 different subjects: test case run, test suite run, and test output. And they can have different predicates. The queued, finished, started, and finished. Oh, sorry, finished is duplicated here, but queued, started, and finished. And then the test output could be published. So this is where like logs and stuff can be notified about being available before maybe the test case has finished or test suite has finished.
Right, and
Or
those
afterwards,
logs can get really big. So again, this is where we do a URI to the
Of course,
logs.
of course. Yes.
So
So I think this event would say there is a reference. Oh, sorry. Whatever. You can look at it in the PR. So there should be references, URL references to the logs, of course. Yeah. So I guess that's one idea where we referencing over duplication in the events. So instead of including a lot of information in the events, we reference the things that are immutable, at least. If there is mutable information that is like status or something in the system, then it's suitable to put into the event, because then you can see the snapshot of what that data looked like at the occurrence of the event. But if it's immutable data, then it makes more sense to reference it instead, at least if it's large data objects.
Right.
Good. I don't know if we can come much further when it comes to the software supply chain, like event types and data types. But what would be a good way forward? The roadmap, of course, for the software supply chain is one thing, but it's not so much hands-on, of course. Is there anything hands-on we could do, like try things or being more involved in, I don't know, salsa communities or somewhere?
My plan for this kind of events would be, was at least in my mind to start with Tecton as a source of generating those events. Mainly because we have in Tecton a component called Tecton Chains, which is basically watching task runs and pipeline execution and creating this kind of thing. So it's creating attestations, generating the SBOM for you in some cases, and also assigning artifacts. And yeah, so I think that it's I had this use case, for instance, when we do a Tekton release, and the artifacts with the container images are created, then one could start and create the release notes, but because in the release notes we also want to include the record, so the SIG-story UUID from the transparent log. So it's best to wait once that information, so the provenance is uploaded and the artifacts are signed. So if we add events for that, we could use those events to trigger the next step in the release, so generation of the release notes after those things are happened, basically. But yeah, so that's kind of the simple or small use case that I had in mind for kind of trying this kind of things out. But
Yeah, we do that. So for the, you dog food the event system, right? And so for the event system, we have an integration suite that runs at test once it gets promoted to test. And when that integration suite passes at test, it goes and it kicks off another watcher that knows what has been updated in what needs to be updated in prod, and it generates the release notes and creates JIRA issues for all of the things that need to be released into prod next week. And it's pretty helpful. So that's a really good scenario, I think, that you've come up with.
It's a perfect starting point there.
Yeah. So what I could do, I could either create a separate issue for this and link it to the original issue, or add more context in there to describe this in the GitHub issue.
Yeah. Reference that comes from Tekton. I think we can stop there. The idea is not really on this SIG meeting to go into any very deep specification discussions or event protocol CD events discussions, because that's what we do in the work group, more in the CD events work group. So here it's more of a higher level a bit to discuss what interfaces, who should we talk to, and who should we bring into these meetings, and where should we go to what other meetings and so on. So I think we've got the message, and it's very interesting, Brett, to hear about your usage of both events and supply chain data there. So I think we have already brought that up now, and what happens in other SIGs. So I think we can go on in the meeting now. Just mentioning then, repeating, I'm sure you're aware, but it's a new year for awards. You've seen all the messages on the Slack and everywhere else. The nomination period ends this Friday, I believe it is. Yeah. So no nominations after Friday. And we have the possibility then to nominate people for the top level CDF awards. And also for any other projects, of course, the projects in CDF, including CD events. We have an issue here where we can nominate people to CD events award. Just mention there. Then I just mentioned some conferences that we relate to somehow. You mentioned there, Brett, another conference you would attend. What was that you said?
That's Raleigh DevOps. That's a local thing to me.
Raleigh DevOps, yeah.
Yeah, Raleigh, like is in Raleigh, North Carolina, like right down the road from my house, because I'm having trouble with travel budget.
Sure, yeah.
Basically, if you're not interacting with customers, generating revenue, you're not getting money to travel this year. So I will pop a link over here though. It's the old one. I need the new one. Raleigh DevOps days. Yeah, it's April 12th and 13th. And I will, like I said, I will definitely try and, gas us up, you know, throw some.
Who joins that conference? Is it a lot of companies there, or mostly local companies, or what happens?
It's a lot of locals, but you remember local for me means Google, Amazon, Red Hat, and you know, Sumo Logic and Cloud Bees. You know, I mean, there's VMware. So
The
you
large
know,
ones, yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's not like Silicon Valley or anything like that, right? I mean, but like we've got an Intel presence here. I don't know. We'll see who goes. I've never been to one of these before, but it's I don't know. It should be interesting. A couple of my ex-coworkers have been on me to come to them and get a talk going. So that's what I have done.
Yeah. I should rephrase
I got
this
it.
now, see.
Okay, I was gonna fix it. That's fine. Yeah, I had a talk in Nashville as well, the Nashville DevOps days, but I had to cancel it because when they dropped my budget for travel, I started looking what it costs for a hotel room in Nashville, North Tennessee. It was pretty expensive. I was like, hey, guess not gonna fund that one out of my pocket. I do have papers in for the CDCon, so we'll see how that goes. There's one of my boss's bosses thinks that there's a possibility if I get you know a spot in that we might be able to figure something out.
Where is the CFP? Where are the dates? Let's see. When it's
The
announced.
CFP is already closed, but it's
Yeah.
8th and 9th of May.
So it's the notifications will come up on Friday then for the ones who have
Yeah. We'll see.
prepared something and announced next. Is it next Monday, right? The schedule then. Yeah. Good.
Right. So I'm not like, and the thing is that I'm just starting this thing where I'm talking at outside conferences, so I'm not very famous yet. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I will be in Amsterdam for the KubeCon session. Next to that, there is this Cloud Native React conference just the days before, I think. I probably won't attend that one. It's interesting because they're the ones that are rejected from KubeCon are able to come there instead. It's in the nearby conference center, I think. Okay, well, don't spend more time on conferences, I guess. Anything else we should bring up from anyone?
The CD work group that is 6 a.m. my time, is that just open? I can just pop in if I manage to get up that early?
You mean Mondays, 6 a.m. for your time, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
It's open for anyone, and the time slot is of course chosen for Asia Pacific people mostly, and Australia or Oceania.
Right.
And it's
I mean,
quite decent for us in Europe as well, of course. But I
Yeah.
totally understand that for US citizens, it's very early.
Yeah, it is early. But I mean, you should go, you know, time zones should be chosen based on the number of contributors, right? So
Yeah, we do alternate at a time. So like we have every other week on Mondays, it's the 11 a.m. UTC, which is very early for you. Then the other weeks, so like the next is March the 7th, we have it at 4 p.m. UTC.
yeah, which is good. Yeah, that's this time frame, the 11 to noon hour.
Yeah, the same as this, yeah.
Yeah, same as this. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I don't have anything else.
No. Yolanda, anything from you?
No. Not, I mean, not
And the
anything. Yeah.
The CFPs for Spinnaker, have you got any more input on that?
So there I haven't got any
Sorry,
updates.
RFC, sorry.
Yeah, RFC for Spinnaker. So no updates on that. So I'm planning to check with the Ben. So I think he's not joined today. Maybe I'll check with him if there's any update.
Yeah. Andrea, anything else in your mind?
No, nothing else for me today. No.
Okay, then I guess we can close for today. Thanks, Brett, for joining and discussing the supply chain topics and the SAS setup there. And talk to you next time then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. See you guys. Thank you.
See you.
Bye.